Lots of coverage. Also, you know, it depends on who actually brings a co-commentator. And the final best of 5 is here. It's a familiar one. Top right, it's Liquid Clem. Blem. Bottom left, it is HeRoMaRinE for Team Mouse. He apparently is being a little bit cheesier today. I haven't seen any of his games, except the last one, and of course this series. The last game he played, he proxy 2-raxed. And with the way that Max Pax was scouting, it seemed like he had done something else in the series. So it leads me to believe that with this proxy 2-rax we are seeing right now, HeRoMaRinE has done cheesy stuff at least 3 times today. So he's playing a little bit more aggressive than we do usually expect, which I think is quickly becoming a wrong thing to say about the guy, that he's always macro and he's never cheesy and so on and so forth, because I think he was doing this last week as well, throwing in a couple more proxies. But Clem has gone for a factory expand and not with the SCV scout. You can do it if you are especially sure, I guess, that you are going to have trouble against a proxy Reaper no matter how you open. You can also SCV scout to get yourself mentally prepared. But you don't have to with a factory expand, as long as you're careful with your first Reaper, and that's kind of the rub. The first Reaper, if it runs across the map carelessly, you wouldn't 2-rax me, nothing to worry about, and it gets killed, that could cause the snowball. But you don't expect players to lose. Well, that helps. So one of the areas is blocked. Well, the SCV is also blocked. But Clem still has no idea that's 2-rax. His Reaper is long gone on the other side of the map, and this is still makes it very complicated for the defense, because the Reaper coming back has to time it out well with the second Reaper, otherwise he just gets overwhelmed, right? This second Reaper also has to be careful about how it gets rallied, because it also would get overwhelmed. Do you see where I'm going with this? So the SCVs come forward. Hopefully that's going to be just enough to make one Reaper good. And it does. Second Reaper now returning home. Would love to join up with his buddy. Why didn't he go up the ramp? We'll never know. I think Clem also was hoping it would go up the Reaper hop up, but maybe misclicked or something. So that complicates things. 2 Reapers, certainly better than 1 as far as DPS, but also that second grenade crowd control can be a big difference in defending someone who's still making Reapers. Obviously, we talk about Hellions being the end of the 2-rax Reaper phase, but kind of depends how the rest of the game's already gone. Technically, 4 to 6 Reapers can kill these Hellions. The 5th one just pops out. It's actually on its lonesome, though, so that's going to get taken down. Yeah, eventually. And it looks like things are okay. It's okay. It's A-okay. Clem is fine on the defense. 2 more Reapers still being made by HeRoMaRinE's a bit surprising, but he looks like he's going to be able to maybe get away with it. 3 Reapers try and find some kind of backstab opportunity. Not really, though. Hellion was there. He's going to take the Hellion down with him. Nope, not quite. He wants one, though. He really does. All right, he finally gets one of the Hellions. Now he stopped producing the Reapers. I think he canceled the very last one he was creating, realizing the Reaper phase is well and truly over. So he's left with 1 Reaper for perhaps a little bit of scouting later on. Clem comes out of this with a command center good, say, like a minute farther than his opponent, and Orbital's already done, already producing SCVs. HeRoMaRinE's about 90% done. So he does get ahead, but not to the point where he just wins the game. It's actually been a long time since I've seen a 2-rax lose the game quickly. I still see it occasionally win the game quickly. Just, again, the Reaper's found out of position, poor control, big surprise, whatever. But I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen the 2-rax player die within the next 2 minutes. it's gonna trade out 1 for 1. Which, you know, depending on how the rest of the game, rest of the build was going, I could argue who that actually benefits. Because Clem, because HeRoMaRinE is going for a medevac drop, I do think Clem losing his only Cyclone is the bigger bummer. If HeRoMaRinE was going for just typical like tanks and ravens from then on, and then I think Clem losing his only Cyclone isn't that big of a deal, it doesn't provide much pressure, and HeRoMaRinE losing his second Cyclone kind of takes away that map presence that a 2 Cyclone opener has. But yeah, because it's a drop, I think Clem's gonna be a little sadder for losing the Cyclone. Doesn't know it's a drop. Probably isn't expecting it too much either. Again, HeRoMaRinE playing probably what we expect Clem to do. You could reverse the names and people would say, yep, yep, that makes sense. Auto turret harassment finds a little bit of success. The medevac barely avoided the Zelnaga. Pretty sure that barely avoided it. And now hitting the natural. There's a tank, there's a Raven. It's probably not going to do that much damage. Probably not. Gotta be careful about the interference matrix. Oh, but also the Raven has to be careful. Double lock on is a spicy. Now keep in mind this is actually the 3rd Cyclone as one died, so HeRoMaRinE has put, I guess, a decent amount of investment into just a double Cyclone harassment, which is apparently now being cleaned up. 5 SCVs were killed, and with the boost being taken off thanks to the interference matrix, this is actually turning into a failure. That was a straight up failure. Vikings able to chase that down thanks to the boost being cut short. And HeRoMaRinE finds himself down in SCVs, but down in army supply. He is farther ahead on the stim and combat shields, though, by a very good amount. He's also got a couple of add-ons already, where his opponent does not. Still add-ons building, but Clem has 2 reactors to HeRoMaRinE's single reactor, which is very, very small potatoes at this point. And while both of them have engineering bays, neither one has started up those upgrades. So right now, while Clem seems to have done everything correctly, he is still, like, he's not ahead. He's not super far ahead. He has to be very careful with how he chooses to use this particular army. Biggest benefit that he has right now is that he has a 2nd Raven. A couple more tanks, but not on the front lines. SCVs actually get pulled into this. This feels unnecessary, actually. He had so many Marines. It's gonna come with a nice concave. And I don't know if 11 SCVs had to die in the making of this defense. I mean, I don't think he... It's actually kind of hard to say. Because he had stim combat shields and so many Marines, I really think he could have handled that, but you don't want to underestimate auto turrets. And even his 3rd tank wasn't quite situated well. Like, he could have... it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Point is, he did what he did, and now he is down 12 workers. I think one of the biggest reasons that you SCV pull there is not because you're afraid that you're going to die. It might be because you just wanted to clean it up so quickly. Like, literally, speed was the reason, so that he could quickly clean this up and immediately counterattack. And if that was a choice he made in the heat of the moment, then that is quite impressive, because it's absolutely the right choice. We're seeing it in action right now. He got over across the map so quickly after tearing down Clem's push that he was able to even threaten this natural base. Can't threaten it too much more. He's going to respect his opponent, as he should. Clem is building up a very good army at this point. But his speed is very close to being rewarded. Takes down the tank at the 3rd base. Auto turret's not able to help enough. Cancel on the CC. This 3rd CC also now in danger. There's going to be a lot of... actually, the SCVs are going to die. The SCVs try and evacuate up the top side. Marines and tanks come down. The support, the 3rd CC, though, is going to be targeted at the last second. It's going to go down. And Clem finds himself down a command center, down in workers, and only slightly ahead in that army supply. I don't know if he can get a counterattack nearly as good as what HeRoMaRinE just did right there. if Clem had lifted his third CC immediately and then broke out like he did, it'd be still a situation where Clem is ahead, but now he has to do that counter damage. He's got 1-1 over his opponent. He has a Viking and a Liberator, so he's going to control the air, but the Liberator's down like 1 health, so I can't say it's actually going to help that much. And I think Clem is just realizing he kind of has to live with this. He can't actually counterattack fast enough to take advantage. HeRoMaRinE was in a dangerous situation for the defense because his tank count is so low. The second tank only just now popping. But Clem couldn't really know that. And even with the lack of tanks, you know, the army fight still might not have gone well enough for Clem. A lot of his army supply was in Vikings, which might have actually been the most useful thing to have there. As I said, the Liberator would actually not play a part because it was so low on health. And he just got repaired up to be... That's pretty nice. And there's no Medivacs for Clem if the engagement did happen too. So there's a lot of things to consider. But at the end of the day, Clem probably correct in pulling back when he did. He's very quick to replacing his third CC on location, which was really his right to do so as the sudden aggressor. He was out on the map pressuring HeRoMaRinE. He was kind of supposed to be able to get away with it on location. So turning into an orbital already, it feels like not much has happened despite the loss of a third command center, which is usually game ending. But there's those times, especially in TvT, where it's like, whatever, close enough. This is one of those. Fourth CC is even on the way, not too far behind HeRoMaRinE. And we got ourselves a good old-fashioned TvT, positioning mattering most. See who maybe can get some run-bys going. Clem's already trying it. It's going to be met by a tank. Just a single tank, though. Could take that out and then get out. Or get a second tank. Oh, yeah, all right, sure, yep. And then this army's going to find maybe not the best army of HeRoMaRinE, but 4 medevacs available to lift and leave. Viking numbers, however, able to get that shot on the medevac at the last second, kill it, full of those Marines. It's a nice little pick there for Clem, who's also now ahead on the +2 attack. So the armor is pretty close to each other, but the attack already being done for Clem as he moves across the map. I mean, it could be big. Nah, it's not going to. HeRoMaRinE not far enough behind to be worried about the upgrade disadvantage as long as he starts his +3 attack as fast as Clem did, which is a bit in question. He doesn't have the gas for it. He does not have the gas, which is a bit surprising. Because he just built a bunch of starports. I was like, why? You had more bases the entire time. Why do you have less gas? He just built all his starports. So he's at 3 starports to 1. And he's been building up the Vikings, whereas Clem just kept his Vikings alive to begin with. Double medevac drop does not work out, but also one of the medevacs doesn't actually die. I don't know if HeRoMaRinE noticed it. He was paying attention to his sensor tower, noticing the army movement over to the right side, which is very, right in responding to, but is it too late? Just shoving all of his Marines through that choke, trying to make this work. It will eventually, but it was at a hefty cost of Marines for HeRoMaRinE, and there's 3 tanks still lined up. The tanks and Vikings of HeRoMaRinE continue to push forward, going to tear those tanks apart. Probably not worth for Clem to continue pushing with those tanks, but I could see what it was thinking. And the drop, by the way, also being F2'd at this point. Oh no, could actually contribute greatly. It could actually have dropped behind that natural or something, but it's just being F2'd. It's going to die to this Viking. No! Oh! The boy who lived slipped on a banana and died. Cracked his skull. Feels bad, man. Imagine if that's how Harry Potter ended. It'd be amazing. So 3-3 does start up for HeRoMaRinE, but long after Clem starts his +3 attack, and Clem's missing armor, which is still impactful to a Marine fight. But that +3 attack being done probably in, 45 seconds could be a big difference maker of his attempted breakouts, as it is now about breaking free. HeRoMaRinE is able to survive while starting his transition, so now he has that chokehold type of composition, Liberators and tanks. So Clem has to think, he has to gamble at this point. So he could try and build up to the same amount of Vikings, but he's still only on 1 starport, so that's actually not an option. So he has to gamble with a potential base race. Just run across the map and buy time, deal some damage. That's exactly what he does. HeRoMaRinE, somewhat prepared for this, does have reinforcements back on his natural, but on his third, so that just might be a free gimme. But it might be a third for a third, and by the looks of it, absolutely will be. No defense to be had for Clem's third CC, not against the Liberator chokehold. Whereas Clem is eventually pushed back by the reinforcements. Now a 70 supply lead for HeRoMaRinE. I think we can safely say he will win. Feels so nice when you say that as the game ends, so you don't look like a dumb commentator. They're both ready to get into Glittering Ashes. There's the countdown. Must be nice to be the chosen one. You have to worry about dying in a car accident. Yeah, if we assume that the prophecy was very literal, that like they could only die to each other, did you just start like diving off of buildings? You're a medevac, Harry. Top right of Glittering Ashes, it is Clem. Bottom left, it is HeRoMaRinE. Not going for 2-racks this time. The 2-racks technically fell behind because of it, but in such a small manner that it's not surprising the game went that it did. What he did better was save his orbitals. Frankly, Clem lost an entire third CC. That's pretty bad. And then he also transitioned very well. He almost was out of position. If Clem had 3 more tanks with the army instead of behind the army, and they're firing after the fact, or if he had just gotten maybe there 10 seconds sooner, then HeRoMaRinE probably doesn't dive on it the way that he did and actually barely make it work. He probably just says, okay, I guess I gotta lose the 4th base, and then it's a much more complicated game. So there was a lot of opportunities for both players to win. By the time that HeRoMaRinE broke out of that potential problem, had his 4 bases up and running, also had his starport transition, that's really the nail in the coffin. It's the real end game of TvT, is you want to have a lot of momentum and then follow up swiftly with that transition into Liberators and or Ravens. The thing is that Liberators are the better transition for that momentum game because they produce faster. So if you have the momentum, if you know you're taking charge and you're pushing the Terran opponent back into their bases, following up quickly with Liberators, you force them into that position that Clem found himself in, which was being slowly pushed back, having to gamble for the base trade, and then you just defend a base trade potential. Sounds easy, not always easy. In that game, it was fairly easy. If HeRoMaRinE had made some mistake, which I don't think he would, but if he had said, oh, you know what, it's late game TvT, let me just go ahead and build up to Ravens, I actually am not sure he does as much to make Clem worry, to force his hand to that base trade. Not that Ravens are bad, they're not. They just, because they produce slowly and they need to be in a bit higher numbers to really be truly threatening. I do wonder if Clem would have been able to get a nice concave of Marines and eventually break out. The Liberators and that choke covered by all those tanks. Anyways. Retention Samurai, thank you for the 16 months. Little Reaper shenanigans. I got a 1-Rax expand versus a factory expand, so technically Clem is getting slightly ahead. He did lose 2 SCVs though, which I think is actually the amount of damage you have to do with the factory expand to equalize. I don't think you have to do very much. Medevac drop from Clem. This is more in line with what we expect. It was HeRoMaRinE the last time, and it was not successful. Because it died. But Clem going for it. It's going to be Marines and a Cyclone. It's got a little bit more of the SCV killing potential. Reaper jumps in, is going to be met with a Hellion, sees the last second swap off. I don't know if they can actually tell. I thought about this before. I think it can tell at the timing of the medevac or the Reaper scout that it was a medevac opener just because of the late factory tech lab, but I'm not actually sure about that. Regardless, HeRoMaRinE does have a Cyclone and a Raven positioned, so. Gotta be careful, however. Medevac might get the lock on, and it looks to be the right call. Clem's lock on to the Cyclone was a bit more damning. The medevac's a bit better at actually escaping. So that's what happened there. Clem gets a medevac, or a Cyclone rather, and hits the natural as well, taking advantage of the tanks. What's it called? Oh shit, what is it called? 6 SVs go down in total. I really can't think of what that's called when a tank can't fire close to it. Jesus. There is a phrase. There is. Clem so far with all the right moves is even going to find a supply depot. HeRoMaRinE doesn't want to give it to him. Slaps down the auto turret to push him away. Raven on the right side, however, from Clem looking for more SCV damage. Hell, it might even go after the tank. Tank moves actually, so not ideal. But he wasn't going to go for it anyways. A couple of SCVs go down, make that 3, maybe 4. It's going to be 4. Is it 5? It's 5. HeRoMaRinE not responding whatsoever. 5 SCVs go down. He's still being bullied by that Cyclone on the supply depot. And HeRoMaRinE actually says, fuck it, I gotta go. I gotta move out. And not only is it a bit of a fuck it moment, but it's also just absolutely correct. Like, Clem has dedicated his energy on the front lines of at least 1 Raven. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about very few units right now. And he's also dedicated his Cyclone, Medevac, and Marines on the side of the map too, right? So there's not a whole lot, potentially, back at home for Clem to defend. By the looks of things, he might have enough, but we'll see. 3 Ravens coming in for HeRoMaRinE. That is a ton of firepower, and absolutely Clem doesn't have enough. And now the SCVs get pulled into the mess, into the fray. Cyclone comes from behind and lock onto a Raven. The SCV pull might just do the trick. How many SCVs will be lost, however? It looks like really not that many. Well, actually, I guess technically it's the same amount. Almost. So 10 SCVs go down. I think the units lost tab is confused. Am I confused? Shouldn't that show 10? Maybe because it's friendly fire and friendly fire only counts on the left, but not on the... Anyways. Kind of freaking me out right now. Clem loses about as much as he dealt damage to HeRoMaRinE. Like, it's a very close SCV count. The problem is that HeRoMaRinE lost the SCVs first, right? A while ago, he lost 5 SCVs, then he lost another 5, then he did his own counterattack. So Clem has already reaped the rewards of having a higher SCV count to the point where he has been able to afford a slightly faster 3rd CC. Maybe slightly faster, yeah, slightly faster barracks with reactors already on them. So HeRoMaRinE's still pretty far behind. 13 supply doesn't look like a lot, but when you account for everything else that he's behind in, he absolutely is behind. He's behind in stim, thus he's going to be behind in combat shields. he's gonna have to make a Maru play here. Defend absolutely perfectly, and then 4 bases. Try and actually play a TvT. Try and actually go out on the map and do stuff. Dead zone. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you, Orajax. Minimum range, minimum engagement range. Nah, dead zone was definitely what I was thinking of. So yeah, HeRoMaRinE has to defend perfectly, which means also accounting for all of the potential Terran movements. Faster sensor tower might have been worth here. So he lost the Raven. Clem realized he was losing the Viking War, but got the last shot in, so at least the Ravens are no longer a factor. And it looks like HeRoMaRinE will he defend his 3rd CC? If his Vikings lands, then he's gonna lose the Viking lead. Even if that would push this back, so... And really, HeRoMaRinE, what happens in TvT when you fall behind is that you really can't just go, okay, I'm gonna start at the early and mid game and just kind of wait for the late game, get there when I get there. You actually can't wait to cross that bridge. You have to go into Viking production, because if your opponent just kills, like, is already getting momentum, already has the lead, and has Vikings to your 0 Vikings, you're just even more screwed than you would be if you would made the Vikings to begin with. So HeRoMaRinE needs to keep these alive for that potential. Just lost another 15 SCVs though, so it's not looking hot. Not looking hot for HeRoMaRinE's defense. He is still holding on, just barely. He actually has an army supply lead right now. And since they're all equal on upgrades, this is the best opportunity for HeRoMaRinE to do counter damage. Clem has a lot of things going for him. 2-2 already on the way. 4th CC already on its way to turn into a planetary. HeRoMaRinE has to do damage. Is it possible? Yeah, it is possible. Clem's gonna track this with a center tower, however, and it makes HeRoMaRinE's job a lot harder. I could see how this fight might have looked okay for HeRoMaRinE, but it did not end up going super well for him. HeRoMaRinE actually applies a little bit more pressure than I thought he was going to be able to. He actually makes Clem sweat for a second there. Thought about retreating, realized he could maybe make a stand, and we're back at a very even supply. HeRoMaRinE still not catching up on the economy, of course, so he's still ultimately, all in, really. Even though he started up as 2-2, but he's making, hopefully, waves happen. He gets the center tower, which is kind of step 1 into finding success. Now that Clem is a little bit more blind, maybe HeRoMaRinE can outposition him. It's getting increasingly unlikely, though, because Clem just is getting enough tanks that he can defend 2 places at once. He's producing 2 tanks at a time. He's been adding faster second factories in this game and the last than I think a lot of other Terrans would be doing. And specifically for this game, it's rewarding him by just if you can line up 6 tanks in one place, you do have to worry about a medevac drop on top of them, sure, but for the most part, they're going to cover each other. So you got to worry about that. You got to worry still about doom drops, hitting places where your tanks aren't. But Clem is going to have an easier time. He's going to have the tanks to cover all of his bases, literally, and then he's also going to have an upgrade lead, so that even if he's a little late to the fight, he should still win it. HeRoMaRinE, at the very least, I'll say, has probably bought enough time that if he did just not engage and maxed out, maybe get his own 4th CC, but he wanted to engage, and it does not go well. GG. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, maybe he just decides to try and play out the macro game and say, well, at the very least, I have you kind of contained, so I'll take that. I'm still muted. Why was I muted to begin with? Oh, I was typing something. Anyway, top right is with Clem, bottom left is HeRoMaRinE. I've made that mistake in a little while. All I was saying is that I forgot why Clem was so far ahead, and then I remembered because of the drop. So, Clem got ahead with the drop, and was able to defend well enough that his earlier investments worked out. Oh, and also there's no proxies. That's all I said. Very unimportant. There is something interesting happening now, however. So it's a factory expand, but HeRoMaRinE going for the double Reaper opener. So that's probably going to be 5 Reaper, 3 Hellion. Is Clem going to have the appropriate tools to defend? Probably. You always got to hype up the potential. He's going to check around and see what's actually on the front line. So this isn't actually the push. I'm probably going to repair that, wouldn't mind. Oh, he gets a Reaper! Oh, no! Clem saves his own Reaper, which he has so few. Whereas HeRoMaRinE really wanted the overwhelming numbers aspect, and it's just 1 Reaper shy now. Wouldn't mind blows up on what looks to be the Hellion as the 3 Reapers kept alive. They do have the most crowd control potential, most micro potential, but it ultimately ends with nothing really going HeRoMaRinE's way. Clem has once again chosen to go for a medevac opener. This time not a Cyclone Marine drop, rather a tank drop. So he's going to hit this location, which, yeah, close enough will kill this supply depot. Now, is HeRoMaRinE going to expect the medevac drop? He hasn't gotten into the main base to see anything. But he's got to know that Clem loves the drops. He loves them. It's a good scout. Now, this tank, what is it going to try and do? Is it going to siege up preemptively? It's going to siege up. Yeah, okay, okay, low ground. All right, so be it. Oh, and Clem making a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Absolutely huge mistake. Terrible drop so far. But that was kind of clever, though. So Clem made the mistake because he probably had a half second to check the height. Oh, wow. This is a bad one. This is... Oh, jeez. Anyways, to highlight the cool things and not just talk about how disastrous that was. I think what happened was that Clem gave himself a half a second to see if the high ground had the tank. And when he said, oh, no tank, he immediately sieged his own. And HeRoMaRinE, maybe expecting that, kind of chose almost like an off angle. You know, if we're like talking about like shooter terminology, it was almost like an off angle, and you were expecting the default angle. So this tank was a big surprise to Clem. Actually, you know what it might be more so than that, is that HeRoMaRinE didn't bother going for a Cyclone. So, talked about this previously, other TvTs aplenty, a couple SCVs go down to an auto turret. Usually in TvT, no matter what your plan is, you usually get a Cyclone, at least one, just because it's such a versatile defensive unit. And it also has a little bit of aggression, so it's a really good unit. But you can technically skip it, and you can get a tank out faster, and that also might be why Clem was so confident in sieging up his tank. Because he thought, there's no tank. The tank's on the way, the Cyclone's out of position. So that's probably more so it. But that means that Clem loses the tank, he loses the drop, then literally loses the drop, he literally has his medevac killed, and now is in a tough position. Not unwinnable, and he's starting to get some serious SCV kills with their auto turret harassment. That's 6, 7 more going down, 8 more going down. It was double auto turret harassment, but keep in mind, this means that the Ravens aren't back at home with energy helping defend. It does mean that Clem now has a 9-worker lead, actually even more so. Another auto turret gets slapped down, and HeRoMaRinE just can't take it anymore. Pulls the SCVs into it. So now it's on 12 supply. But maybe if HeRoMaRinE can continue pressuring this natural, it might not kill 12 SCVs, but it might deny 12 SCVs of mining. Oh, the Viking count now benefiting Clem. Cyclone gets blown apart. Auto turrets do get slapped down. Those Vikings get torn to shreds eventually. Actually, I don't think the turreting was there. Oh, it was on the tank. Oh, I didn't even see that. The Vikings were blocking the tank. Okay, so the auto turrets chose the tank to try and focus down. That would have made a little more wiggle room for HeRoMaRinE to move up. So he knew what he was doing, obviously, but yeah, he loses the air war. He doesn't kill the tank. He loses more SCVs back at home as the Ravens are now pretty carefree. They're like, oh, I guess we really are necessary on the front lines. Oh, the SCV pool is going to hurt, however. Oh, Lord baby Jesus. 17, 18, 20 SCVs go down. Clem not able to quite break it either, and that actually is a game-ending mistake. He did need his Ravens back at home. That's it. That is actually it. Clem tries to break at the precise moment, which is always hard to call in TvT. There's the moment that you need, you know, after you've gotten enough units to break it, but before they have a reinforcement point or their energy comes back, right? And there's that little time you actually should pull the SCVs to defend. But that probably wasn't actually the timing. Ravens finally get pushed out, but I mean, if they die, and they're gonna die, there's no auto turret. Clem is... those are gonna be so useful for his push. He's up shit creek without a paddle. Clem is down 13 workers. He does have his third on location, but he can't even afford to produce triple SCV. His army supply is really good, though. Like, if Clem had saved his Ravens, he probably keeps his contain up for a very long time. But without the Ravens, and HeRoMaRinE having his, with energy, I think HeRoMaRinE will eventually break free of this contain. So now the question is, can Clem contain... Can Clem contain, I think I just mixed all those words together, long enough to come back in the economy? He's already halfway there. HeRoMaRinE has combat shields, so he's got that favoring him, but not a whole lot of Marines. So he can't quite take advantage of it yet. Clem chooses actually the exact right moment to pull back. HeRoMaRinE was setting up the break. His Ravens had gone to the right to try and come in unnoticed on top of the tanks. So Clem unsieging there was really perfectly timed. And HeRoMaRinE, again, with the combat shield upgrade, was looking more and more intimidating. More Marines came forth. Also was going to have a 1-1 upgrade lead. Not for very long, to be fair. But it could translate into a 2-2 lead. Actually, no armor on the way, so never mind about that. Scans go down, and for HeRoMaRinE, he sees a fully saturated third CC and has probably recognized at this point he has lost any lead he might have gained, which is actually kind of arguable that he would even say he had a lead. I think if you look at the numbers and the production and the setup, I think he did, but we have all the numbers. If you put yourself in his shoes, I think you would also be very confused. You're like, well, I did some damage, but then he did damage, and I'm just not even... With the scan of the third, he knows a little bit more as to where he is at, which is clearly that's been mining for a while. It's already fully saturated. His was delayed. Still not even fully saturated. HeRoMaRinE falls slightly behind, but slightly. With how many SCV pulls and deaths there have been, you'd really think someone came out truly ahead. But nope, apparently not. Now, their army supplies are very even. The armory did come down faster for Clem, but actually finding the minerals to start 2-2 is a little bit more troublesome, so he does not get the better lead he could have had HeRoMaRiNE's armory was just so late, still not even done. But he's gonna have a lead, so things turn back into Clem's favor. Upgrade lead, SCV lead, 4th command center, actually almost done. And HeRoMaRiNE hasn't started his, so very much ahead. I don't know if Clem has a totally accurate assessment of the game either, though. To bring us back into the player's seat, I think a pretty hard game to tell. And they obviously have a lot of respect for each other's potential, so, well, this is gonna get weird. So Clem gets choked up so bad that it was really hard for him to take a fight, a legitimate fight. Plus, he gets painted orange. We call that pumpkin spice around these parts during winter. But overall, not the worst engagement possible. He was able to still at least siege his tanks. And so he keeps the about 15 army supply lead. That 2-2 is also closing in, so as HeRoMaRiNE thinks he's about to find a lot of success, he's actually pushing Clem back, rather. He eventually will be up against 2-2 Marines, and that's something you really can't break. But maybe if his tank count continues to grow, we do have double tank production for both of them, and maybe he can just contain Clem, get that chokehold, and there's a potential for follow-up into Liberators here, too. Clem is not happy about being pushed back so much, I'll tell you that. Now his break is going to be a lot more complicated, but oh my god, this is one hell of a surround. Every single direction, orange painted on some of the Marines, but clearly not all of them, but even with the surround. And it was hella impressive. 39 SCVs go down. 39, that is a tremendous amount. HeRoMaRiNE now leads SCVs by 30, but can he withstand the counterattack? I guess that is the big question. Is Raven's about to go down, and he decides he cannot withstand the counter, and he taps out. GG. What a game. I don't know how we went from lobby being just perfect to lobby being full. We got a potential lobby sneak. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. How do we have the perfect slots, number of slots for 3 games, and then all of a sudden we had too few for the 4th? It's always so silly. I just can't really sympathize for anyone who joins without permission. There's the people who do it maliciously, and obviously you don't care about them. There's the people who do it with the knowledge that they shouldn't, but they thought maybe it wouldn't be a big deal, and I don't have sympathy for them. And then there's like the people who, I guess, legitimately have no idea that it's not allowed. And they're like, what? You had to ask for permission? I didn't know, sorry. And I judge them. I still judge them. I've said it before. Sometimes I almost wish I had their, I don't know, audacity to just stroll into anything and be like, yep, I deserve to be here. For me, I've been casting StarCraft for 12 years almost at this point, and I still make sure I have casting like applications in and ready and read, and I'm allowed to cast things. Anyways, top left is Clem, bottom right it is HeRoMaRinE. So Clem leads the series 2-1. Some very back and forth TvTs though. Could kind of easily forget who is ahead. I almost did. That last game was back and forth indeed. But HeRoMaRinE, he had done a lot of SCV damage. He was about to take more damage in the return because his army supply was lower. He also had never gotten a 4th CC, I think. So he certainly not on location. So he knew he was still pretty far behind, even though he killed a lot of SCVs. So tough games. Tough games for both of them. I mean, considering how just like epically bad the beginning was for Clem, wasn't that game? Yeah, that is surprising how it ended up going, but it happens. Clem goes for a 1-Rax command center, but then puts it on the high ground, so it's gonna look like a factory expand to any just kind of casual SCV scout. HeRoMaRiNE's not gonna do an SCV scout because he's factory expanding, so there's not really anything hidden. Because nothing... Well, everything's hidden. If everything is hidden, nothing is hidden. So it's going to be a Hellion opener after this 1-Rax expand. Which is... This is a map with a natural ramp. Not usually considered the best map for Hellions just running on in. So I got to assume it's going to be a drop. Clem has done a Medivac drop now 3 times in a row, but every drop was slightly different. Cyclone Marine, Tank Marine, now potentially Hellions. Oh, Hellion Marauder. I kind of forgot this was his old... standby, mostly because I still believe it only works about 30% of the time. I still think it's actually not a great all-in build. It's fun, but it's just I see it fail more than not. But that's just one woman's opinion. I'm not watching all of his ladder games. But you know, it definitely is a way to change things up. It's not technically so all-in that you can't macro out of it either. We've seen enough times where Clem does meh and still does okay in the rest of the TvT. But it does seem to be one of his fallback options that only he is continuing to do. Almost every other Terran Yeah, I can't say I've seen him do it. So you get Hellions, you get Marauders with slow. It looks like the maybe ZVT, right? Hellbat attack. And one of the ideas is that because of Marauders with slow, can chase down either the Cyclone, which is being made, or simply put, kill a tank very quickly, that you actually might be able to bust. The Medivacs also can heal the Marauders. The Marauders taking a lot of damage. You know what it is. Now, the HeRoMaRinE is going to take away a lot of that potential. Cyclone lock on to one of the Marauders. The other one dies anyways. Now, the problem is the amount of Hellions that are left over, so this might still end up being a victory for Clem, despite that cheeky little HeRoMaRinE. The Cyclone gets taken down, and I do believe this is going to be Clem's victory. Already so much damage being done. Auto turret is potentially going to save the day, but maybe the evacuation to the top side is going to lead to a few more SCV deaths. Not quite. 2 more SCVs were in the red, but 11 SCVs in total. Is that good enough damage? I'd say so. Remember, it was a 1RX expand, so it's not like he's super far behind on the command center. So he's up 11 workers exactly, with both orbitals already done and churning out SCVs, and a 3rd CC is already on the way as well. So Clem does get a very good lead, but it wasn't game-ending. 20 SCVs would have been game-ending. So we kind of have the opposite of the last situation. The last game, the Medivac drop was a complete and total failure. Absolutely. This game, the Medivac drop was a success. But with TvT being TvT, it's always... If this turned around, I would not be surprised. Clem is not going to bother with Ravens by the looks of things. Oh, we already built them. JK. He is going straight into the Viking production afterwards, as it's going to match HeRoMaRiNE's build as well. Or, not even build at this point, just compositional decisions, whatever. But Clem's going to be faster on everything. He's going to be able to afford Stim, 3rd CC faster, much faster, Barracks much faster. So while HeRoMaRiNE does have the economy produced from all this, he doesn't have the economy to produce very much else. So Clem should just be getting farther and farther ahead. This could even turn into a game where HeRoMaRiNE kind of, somewhat lamely just taps out because he's contained. He's behind, then he gets contained. He thinks into the future a couple of steps and realizes there's no chance for me, and he taps out. And he wouldn't be wrong, just, there'd be no fireworks. So he kind of has to do or die right now, break it or not. And he's going to try and break. It's not going to work. Auto turrets come down to protect Clem's army. And the interference matrix is going to wear off, so that tanks can unsiege. Viking landing not going to be quite enough. HeRoMaRiNE does technically push Clem back, so he can take his 3rd CC, but it was a tough break. Clem still reaping the rewards from earlier, faster upgrades in every department, faster production on the barracks, and still having more SCVs. But HeRoMaRiNE had to make a tough choice, man. He couldn't just be contained. So even though he loses a fair bit and doesn't make up for really anything in this game, he at least says I can take my 3rd CC. Now defending that is going to be quite the challenge. There's so many angles of attack that he just can't really cover. And then if he tries to cover all of the angles of attack, then he might be vulnerable to a concave. So either you pair up all your tanks on this one attack path up here and you gamble that they don't move over here. Or you spread your tanks like he has, but then maybe big old concave still attacking from the left even. Like, that's going to be hard for HeRoMaRiNE to defend. So tracking the army would be lovely. It would be nice. It would be very nice, but he can't really afford a sensor tower at this point. It'd be a very hefty investment. He is going to go for it, but it's, I do think it's worth it. I do think it's worth it. We've seen other games where he's decided to push that off. I think this is absolutely worth it. And considering, he started most of the things he needs, so he had 1-1 going, he had his 2 barracks going, he had his reactors building. He could afford the sensor tower. I think the only thing it really delayed was a bit of combat shields. Just a couple seconds. And it's so worth to know which angle they're coming in from. So, He knows where to position his army. Does that matter? Does he still get overwhelmed? He's going to be behind in the upgrades and combat shields. He's now down about 40 army supply. Doesn't have any ravens. Why doesn't he have any ravens? Didn't he have ravens? He just lost 2 of them trying to harass, I think is what happened. I just completely missed it because I'm super smart and super good. It's a cheeky missile turret. Didn't kill it, but maybe it helped kill them. I don't know. Point is, two ravens missing. Would have been really helpful. So here comes the push, and it's just so difficult to defend on this map. So difficult. Got a little drop over here, clearing up some of the scouting. You could actually hit the 3rd CC a little bit too. Clem should also, he shouldn't just be focusing on the attack. That is probably how you would lose a TvT in this position, is just trying to attack into someone who is very good at defending. So he should eventually add on starports. But if he wins with the attack, then that's much nicer. That's easier. That's quicker. And it looks like that's exactly what he'll do. A couple interference matrix go down. Now the 3rd CC can't be defended with anything besides Marines, which aren't going to cut it. And Clem takes the 3-1 victory. GG. GG. Clem is looking quite good. He looks like he's preparing for Katowice. I'd still say that his TvT is looking the most questionable, but obviously he just took down HeRoMaRinE, so it's looking pretty darn good. But it just, you know, his performances in January, mid-January against the Zerg and the Protoss were also a little more questionable than we would expect. This week, he seemed to have just, this week and last, he kind of dispelled that fear that he might not be up to his top level. He demolished Raynor after I was doubtful, and then he demolished Showtime after I was doubtful. And while I didn't demolish HeRoMaRinE here, he still played better today. Still played really good.